Hello and welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chats. Not as good as 50 hours, but it's something. Now, before we get into the main topic of this video, there's going to be one big disappointment. As you can see, this episode's not about the recent presidential debate. That's because I always record my podcasts on Saturday, whereas they decided, we're going to hold the debate on Monday. Not Monday, Sunday. So, I'm not going to be getting a look at that episode, like that debate breakdown, until if at all, a week from now. So yeah, it's just not gonna happen. With that out of the way, let's get right into the news. First of all, we're gonna go through one big major update that has been going on. It's in regards to Chelsea Manning. There's two things that happened. One, Chelsea Manning attempted suicide in jail. It's the third or fourth time this happened. Second in jail, I think. But she also attempted suicide at one other point when she was in the midst of her running for Senate. It was confirmed by her legal team that this happened, and then she was in the hospital and recovering. She was scheduled to appear before a judge on Friday to terminate a sanction that she's faced for refusing to testify against Julian Assange, because they're trying to coerce Manning into testifying about her past association with Assange. Basically, here's what's going on. Assange, as we all know, is in the UK where the US trying to extradite him to here, so that they can make him into a martyr or something. Not a martyr. They want to make him an example. So here's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get Chelsea to say that Assange openly helped her get the information that she received in her leaks that she gave to him. So basically they're trying to say, in the US, there's currently a little bit of wiggle room for Assange. Not a lot, but a little bit of wiggle room, because he did not himself get the information. He received it from Manning. He didn't hack into the US to get the information himself. But if they can get Manning to say that he did coerce it, even just by him saying, hey, can you give me a little something else? They can extradite him to the US. Now, Manning is not doing that for a lot of reasons. For one, I doubt that she wants what's happening to her to happen to Assange tenfold, because that's what's going to happen if she says that. And second, it's because I doubt that that's true, because, like I said with the Assange case in a previous episode, if it was true, I doubt Manning would hold out that long. If it was true, at one point she would have cracked, let's be real. If you were in jail, and then you had information that could put me in your situation tenfold, and you'd be let off the hook. Unless that it was 100% true, you would probably try to stick to your guns and just be the good guy, but if it was 100% true, you wouldn't. And that's what I'm saying. If this were 100% true, and Assange did try to coerce Manning to get the information from her, she would have revealed that already. She's not going to do this over and over again and get basically tortured just for fun or something. I don't know. No, that's not what's going to happen. She's going to, admit the truth. She would admit the truth. Because remember, she's a whistleblower. She doesn't lie. She tells the truth. That's kind of her thing. Reveal the hidden truths. That's what whistleblowers are kind of known to do. Now, of course, that's really bad news. That Chelsea Manning tried to kill herself again. However, there was a little bit of light shining down. Chelsea Manning ordered immediately released from federal holding. U.S. District Judge Anthony J. Trenga ordered whistleblower Chelsea Manning released from detention on Thursday, a day after she attempted to take her own life. However, he did not release her from the fines that she incurred as punishment, which total $250,000. Now, this is big if it ends up happening. Because, I mean, this is going to go up on the day that it's supposed to be put in court, so I assume that it must be officially that she got released. Because a lot of people are celebrating, like, she got released, but I just add the caveat of, like, she was ordered released. Technically, the U.S. government could literally still be like, nah, we'll keep her in. And then there'd be a larger ordeal. So I think just for the time being, we're probably gonna have to... I think she is released, to be fair. This is a good thing. This is 100% good. If she gets freed, again, she is all good. Well, I mean, of course, not all good, really. You know, she still has all the mental trauma, and, you know, she has to live through the fact that she was jailed, like, twice. One time when she was struggling with her identity. But she'll be a free woman again. Remember, Obama commuted her sentence the day, like, in his last year of office. I don't remember the exact reason, but I think it's the same reason with that Anthony Trenga points out. It's like, yeah, her being in jail, this is just not doing anything. I think Anthony Trenga is coming off a bit more worse, because he's saying, like, Miss Manning's appearance before the grand jury is no longer needed, in light of which her detention no longer serves any coercive purpose. So basically, he's saying that her being in jail is no longer a threat because she tried to kill herself, so we're going to let her out. Which is exactly why he's not going to waive the fines. Because that's still considered a threat, I guess. Like, you're still gonna pay this fine, haha. But apparently, like, I'll find the proper link and include it in the description, or in a card, or in a tweet, or all of the above, to her team that are putting together funds to pay off the fines. From what I last read, they're not that far from reaching their goal. Pretty far, but they're not that far. Now, that was a good thing. Now let's talk about a bad thing. U.S. government reauthorized the Patriot Act again. Yeah, they tend to do that. They reauthorize the Patriot Act a lot. The bill passed 278 to 136. 15 people didn't vote. And as I always do with these kinds of votes that are pretty big and pretty noticeable, I'm going to name every single person that voted correct on this bill. Abraham, Amash, Berrigan, Bass, Betty, Biggs, Bishop, Blumenauer, Bonamici, Brendan Boyle, Brooks, Buck, Bud, Burchett, Carter, Georgia, Castro, Texas, Chew, Clark, Massachusetts, Clark, New York, Clay, Cleaver, Klein, Cloud, Connolly, Carrera, Davidson, Ohio, Danny K. Davis, DeFazio, DeJet, Dilben, DeSaulnier, DeJarlis, Dingle, Doggett, Michael F. Doyle, Duncan, Emmer, Eschew, Espelliette, Flores, Fudge, Fulcher, Gabbard, Garcia, Illinois, Gianforte, Gomert, Golden, Gomez, Gooden, Graves, Louisiana, Al Green, Griffith, Grijalva, Holland, Hagedorn, Harris, Harib Wetler, Heiss, Georgia, Higgins, Louisiana, Hollingsworth, Huffman, Huizenga, Jayapal, Jeffries, Kelly, Illinois, Kelly, Pennsylvania, Kennedy, Kana, Kidley, Kim, King, Iowa, Lamborn, Lee, California, Levin, Michigan, Ted Lieu, Lofgren, Long, Loudermilk, Lowenthal, Luann, Carolyn B. Maloney, Marchant, Massey, Mast, McClintock, McCallum, McGovern, McNeary, Meng, Mooney, West Virginia, Moore, Nagoose, Norman, Ocasio-Cortez, Omar, Pallone, Perry, Pingreen, Pocan, Posey, Presley, Raskin, Rogers, Washington, David P. Rowe, John W. Rose, Roy, Rush, Schachowski, Schwiert, Serrano, Smith, Missouri, Smith, Washington, Takano, Tipton, Titus, Tlaib, Tonko, Torres, Trahan, Van Drew, Villiquez, Walbert, Walden, Walker, Waters, Watson, Coleman, Weber, Texas, Webster, Florida, Welch, Williams, Wilson, South Carolina, Whitman, Wright, Yarmouth, Yoho, Selden. Now, this vote is interesting because it's making me think about updating my website to include a little bit more incumbents. I mean, not that many, like 2. Because there have been a couple of names I've been noticing on a lot of good votes that I've just been like, these guys seem to be doing well. But I gotta give them the, test, just to make sure. The ones I think, of course, talking about are Andy Levin and Marco de Salaner. I'll let you look more into them in your own whatevers. But I'm just gonna leave it at what happened recently, just the vote. Now, speaking of something that happened recently, the March 10th primaries, what many people called Mini Tuesday. Now, what happened? Like, what were the results? Well, here are the results. Of the 6 states that voted, 4 went to Joe Biden, 1 went to Bernie Sanders, and 1 is still pending. Washington is still pending, and North Dakota went to Bernie. Everywhere else went to Biden. Now, why? One thing that many people seem to agree with, except for the ones that don't, are voter suppression. Voter suppression is a big one. There are videos of students waiting in long-ass lines, reportedly for 3 hours, before having to go home, and not even getting to vote. Now, some people are like, oh yeah, but they could have stayed in the line and voted. They have classes in the morning. They have work in the morning. You can't be serious and thinking oh, why didn't they just stay in line? They have lives. Again, this is why I recommend voting early if you can. Though to be fair, maybe they couldn't. I don't know. They might have been able to, they might not have been able to. It doesn't seem to be the best case scenario. I early voted, and I think it's the best case scenario for anybody who wants to do it in states that allow it. Or we could make Election Day a federal holiday so that people could stand in line for 3 hours and still have the ability to go vote. This mostly targets young people, which is of course Bernie's big base, and this is just the big thing. Now, there's one takeaway that seems to have happened after this night. James Carville, well-beloved Democratic strategist, had this beautiful, wonderful advice to give the day that happened.
You have to have respect for democracy. And this is very clear what Democrats around the country are saying. And just everywhere that you go, they come in, James, we got to get rid of this guy. What are we doing? And these are not ordinary times. And we got to, of course, the vice president, he's the guy in the lead. He's got to take the lead here. We got to bring this party together. We have to stop this. This is not to any avail to continue this thing any longer. It really isn't. And we can have respect and we can have admiration for what Senator Sanders and his supporters have accomplished, but we got to respect Democratic voters. You got to respect people in the Mississippi Delta, in Sunflower County, Mississippi. You got to respect people in Oakland County, Michigan. You got to respect people in Orangeburg, South Carolina. You got to respect people in Loudoun County, Virginia. I mean, this is what this is really about. The Democratic voters have spoken. They've spoken unambiguously and clearly, and they need to be listened to.
I don't know if you understood what he said, but he said we need to A, respect democracy, and B, cancel the rest of the primaries. I know he didn't explicitly say cancel, but you clearly heard him say, he was like, we gotta bring this thing to an end. We just gotta stop this thing. What are we doing? Because fuck Arizona, Florida, Illinois, Ohio, Georgia, Alaska, Hawaii, Wyoming, Wisconsin, Connecticut, Delaware, Maryland, New York, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Kansas, Indiana, Nebraska, West Virginia, Kentucky, Oregon, D.C., Montana, New Jersey, New Mexico, South Dakota, and Louisiana. They just mean nothing to the Democratic Party. All you Democratic voters in these states, I mean, you just can't. Your opinions just don't matter because 24 states have already spoken. It doesn't matter if you all overwhelmingly vote Bernie. It doesn't matter because the primary should be over. 24 states have voted already. Let's just cancel the rest of this stuff. And I mean, seriously, the Democratic Party is literally saying that they are okay with just canceling the primaries because we gotta defeat Trump. It doesn't matter what you voters believe in. The vote is only halfway in at this point. The election's over pretty much. I mean, again, it doesn't matter if every single one of these states overwhelmingly vote Bernie. It doesn't matter because, I mean, the voters in a minority of states have already spoken. Like, seriously. You seriously think that we need to just stop the primaries because, again, a minority of states have made a decision. And that decision happens to be Joe Biden is the overwhelming candidate pick. Now, and here's the thing. If it were reversed and Bernie was overwhelmingly winning, I would 100% not be saying everybody else should just drop out now. It's called a primary election. You run an election. You let the people choose. You let them choose. And James, it's interesting you say this because literally every single exit poll that has come out shows that Democratic voters overwhelmingly support Medicare for all. Even the people who voted Biden overwhelmingly support Medicare for all. Are you guys going to overwhelmingly support Medicare for all back? No, because Joe Biden literally said that even if Medicare for all goes through both chambers of Congress and passes, he'll still veto it. Like, excuse me? You're still gonna claim, oh no, progressives, we gotta win with Joe Biden. No, you're not gonna win progressivism with Joe Biden. You're just not. He's gonna knock you down at every single turn. The only difference is Donald Trump and Joe Biden, they both knocked down progressive reforms. The only difference is Donald Trump doesn't then ask for your vote. And there's also been another interesting development because this just happened.
I believe that Joe Biden will be the Democratic nominee, and I've always said I'm going to support whoever the nominee is, so I hereby am endorsing Joe Biden to be not just the nominee for the Democratic Party, but the next president of the United States. And I say this, having supported Bernie Sanders in 2016, Bernie was an inspiration for me, inspired my run, but the math says Joe is our prohibitive nominee. We need to bring the party together. We need to start working on defeating Donald Trump in the fall. I've had many personal conversations with Joe about the impact of the Fourth Industrial Revolution on the middle class. I believe that he's the right man for the job to help us not just defeat Donald Trump, but govern the country in the years ahead.
Andrew Yang endorsed Joe Biden. I have a couple of things to say. First of all, the Yang Gang seemed interested in that development, and progressivism as a whole has seemed to take an interesting viewpoint on Yang's endorsement. Progressive circles have been saying, oh, this proves that Yang's been a liar the whole time. Some people say they're indifferent to him endorsing Joe Biden. Mostly people in the Yang Gang saying, like, oh, no, this is no different than when Bernie endorsed Hillary in 2016. And like, first of all, it is incredibly different. One, Bernie endorsed Hillary 2 weeks before the Democratic Convention. Yang is endorsing Biden months before the Democratic Convention. Before he even got presumptive nominee status. Like, remember the term Yang said during the thing? Prohibitive nominee? That's not a thing. That has never been a thing. That has never, in the history of U.S. politics, been a thing. How can it be a thing? Prohibitive is defined as, one, of a rule or law forbidding or restricting someone, of a conditions or situation preventing someone from doing something, of a price or charge excessively high, difficult, or impossible to pay. What do you mean by prohibitive nominee? He's restricting himself to be the nominee? I don't know what you're talking about. It's because the term's made up. It's not true at all. You just pulled that one out of your ass, Yang. Second, it seems to be just a trend that started to fall. He joined CNN as a contributor. He apparently smack-talked Bernie on like his first day or second day. It was just, nah. Looks like Yang is pulling a Gillum. Because remember that talk that he had like a couple seconds ago? He said, I've been having talks with Joe Biden. Now he says like, oh, it's obviously about the thingy about the Industrial Revolution. That's not true. I can't prove it. But whenever two presidential candidates talk, the issues rarely, if ever, come up, let's be real. Cabinet positions are very likely to come up, though. And Yang has been on the cabinet listings of Michael Bloomberg and apparently now Joe Biden. Yang has openly stated that he would love to work with Joe Biden in a cabinet position. Yeah, Yang endorsed Biden just to get a cabinet position. Because this breaks one of Yang's rules. Yang said, very simply, I will not endorse a candidate for president unless they adopt the UBI plan. And guess what? Look at the presidential candidates remaining. Bernie, Biden, Tulsi, and then the rest. Guess which one of them is in support of UBI? Not Joe. Tulsi. Did he endorse Tulsi? He endorsed Joe Biden because of that sweet, sweet cabinet position. VP? I don't know. But he's getting a cabinet position, I'll tell you that much. There are people who are saying that Yang was going to announce a run for mayor in like the last week, but maybe that was confused for his Humanity Forward thing. But notice after that endorsement, the mayoral talks all of a sudden disappeared. Seems a little interesting, I'll tell you that much. Now here's the thing. If he endorsed Biden at the convention, or like 2 weeks before the convention, or after the last primary state, and like presumptive nominee, again, like at least wait till he's the presumptive nominee at the very least. That would have at least, again, tied into one of your agreements. Because, I mean, again, he did say that he wouldn't endorse a candidate for office early until they supported his UBI plan, but he also pledged that he would inevitably support the Democratic nominee. So, you know, because Democrats have to give that unity pledge pretty much. Like, you'll support whoever it is, no matter what, right? They're like, yeah, we'll support whoever it is. But he should have waited until Biden was the presumptive nominee, or Bernie, or Tulsi, or whatever. Would have kept him ideologically pure, would have kept him pure to his base, would have kept him pure to every angle. Now pretty much everybody sees him as an opportunistic hack. Like, even a lot of the Yang Gang has pretty much turned on him, and they've been tweeting at him and saying, like, you know, you shouldn't have endorsed Joe Biden. You made a terrible choice. And he's like, yeah, I know. It's like, well, then why'd you make the choice? I mean, granted, he's not holding out his endorsement and being like, oh, but the snake emojis. Now, since we're not going to talk about the Liz Warren thing, because who cares? Liz Warren's choosing to screw progressives in a second race, whatever. Now let's move on to a smaller candidate of the day. Robert Ardini. He's a moderate Republican, even a Democrat can like. He ran for Congress in 2016. He ran against Carolyn Maloney. He's, of course, describing himself as a moderate Republican because, you know, that's the thing that he wants to do to win Democrats. He also supposedly, ran as a libertarian-leaning Republican when he ran for Congress. He describes himself fiscally conservative and socially liberal. You know, the average libertarian, moderate stuff. Let's see, term limits. One thing is his number one issue is the national debt, but congressional term limits and gridlock, he basically wants to bridge the party divide, you know, it's the same typical stuff. He's run in a couple of states so far, and, you know, surprisingly, hasn't done so well. Now on to a presidential election that is more important with more serious contenders. We're going to talk about the 2020 Bolivia presidential election. Now, for those of you who do not know what is going on, let me explain. You see, in Bolivia, they have a president, obviously. Their president, for a while, was Evo Morales. He was president from January 22nd, 2006 to November 10th, 2019. Now, why is he not president anymore? Well, that was an interesting thing. You see, in Bolivia, Morales won 47.08% of the popular vote in the most recent presidential election, 2019, which made it so that he was just, barely edged out his opponent for a runoff. However, his opponents, not only his major opponent, Carlos Mesa, who was president of Bolivia previously, but also his, many of his right-wing opposition were raising quote-unquote concerns over the presidential voting, because the polling going in, of course, had Morales in the lead, but here's the thing, they have two vote counts, the unofficial vote count and the official vote count. The unofficial vote count, it's pretty much just when you go on Google on the day of an election and then you just see the numbers rolling. That's what it is. They get to 50% of the vote, and then they just decide to stop that count and then move on to the official count, the one that would be counted like as legitimate. But his opponents cried foul and claimed that he, because it was a brief amount of time before the official count started to re-rolling in. His opponents then cried foul by having him be they pretty much stopped him and was like, no, we demand that you finish the old recount. And he's like, but guys, it's not how you do this. I mean, this isn't how we do the elections. We do it by going, and they're like, no, we demand that you finish the old recount. And he's like, well, okay. And since it was a decent amount of time before they went to finish that recount, he jumped 10 points in the polls because 10% more of the country had voted. And then they're like, how did you get from this point to this point in this amount of time? That's impossible. And he's like, well, you made me delay the official recount. I would have made it come out a lot more clearly. And then they were pretty much saying that he was rigging the election in favor of him. And that's one of the things that people latch on to, 10-point lead. How do you get to that 10-point lead very fast? It's well, you gotta go through specifics. And then Morales, being not an idiot, immediately was like, look, guys, I can prove my elections aren't rigged. And he, called for he called for other countries to examine his elections, check for fraud, check for any fraud. He was literally asking them to look for fraud, being like, guys, look. And it shows he has nothing to hide. Then he decided that he would not wait and just said, you know what, fine, I'll call for another election. But that didn't stop the protests, because they were protests galore. The right-wing opposition and the left-wing majority were going at each other. Many people who were targeted were indigenous people that greatly prospered under Evo Morales' rule, because Evo Morales himself was at least partly indigenous. And it got bad, really bad. There's one story of a mayor of a town, a female mayor of a certain town, who was dragged into the street, kicked to her knees, spray painted in the face, had her hair forcibly cut off, and basically she was forced to resign and walk barefoot for hours, just because in the town next to hers, there were 2 protesters killed. Not even her town. Things took a turn when the Bolivian army actually started to side with the right-wing opposition, and they started making arrests of many politicians affiliated with Evo Morales' party, even arresting many members of his Supreme Court. It got to the point where Evo Morales and his vice president literally freaking resigned and bailed. They left. And I mean, you should watch the video where he's, the last sighting of him in Bolivia. People are running to him and begging him, please don't go. We need you. We need you, Evo. You're our hero. This guy was a popular politician that helped Bolivia prosper. And he was just kicked away, thrown to the curb, because he was a socialist. And again, he did well. People love him. Morales' first term, he won 53.74% of the popular vote. Second term, 64.08% of the popular vote. Third term, 61.36% of the popular vote. What would have been his fourth? Remember, 47.08% of the popular vote. Not to say that he was perfect. I will give the criticism. Here's where they started with the whole, he's a dictator crap. Here's where they started with that. 2009, Bolivia instituted an amendment to their constitution. That amendment said that presidents could only run for 2 terms. Evo Morales had already been serving 1 term up to that point, so technically he was still eligible for 2 more terms. He ran and won for those 2 terms, as we all saw. However, in 2016, Evo Morales instituted a referendum which said that, hey, can we, change that so I can run for another term? Not indefinitely. He just wanted another term, which would have been his 4th term, but 3rd under this new constitution. The referendum was voted down 51.3% to 48.7%, which means it failed. However, Evo Morales then went to the Supreme Court of his country and said, hey, are term limits constitutional? And they said, no, term limits are not constitutional. Ergo, you can run again. That's where I think Morales screwed up. Morales had many ways that he should have went about this. For one, you could argue maybe Morales should have respected the will of the referendum and not have gone to the Supreme Court. You could also argue maybe he shouldn't have even brought up the referendum at all. Maybe he should have just gotten his VP to run for president in his place. Have him continue the Morales agenda. That's where Morales probably screwed up. I'll give the opposition that. Maybe he should have either respected the will of the people in the referendum, not brought up the referendum at all, or just should have just done one of those 2. But, we're now in a different situation. The right-wingers have pretty much taken over Bolivia. At least they're in control of the government at the moment. Where the people stand, we'll see. Because I think it'd be best to look over what's going on in Bolivia's election. Because they're going to be having an election on May 3rd. Which will try to hopefully fix everything. Take what was going on in the country at the moment and finally put them back on track. I'll be going over the candidates and the parties that they represent. And polls or whatever. To basically explain what's going on. There are technically 8 presidential candidates, but 2 of them have really just kind of not really contributed at all in this current Bolivia coup, so I guess I'll just mention them right now. Feliciano Mamani of the National Action Party of Bolivia, and Fernando Gainza of the Nationalist Democratic Action Party. That party is national conservative neoliberal, right-wing on its political agenda. But again, I think later in the video I'll say something that's just kind of opposes that, but you'll find out that sometimes there's some party overlaps and party groupings that don't necessarily agree overall. The first candidate that I shall talk about is Jorge Quiroga, who is running as a coalition candidate of Libre 21, but prominently the political party, the Revolutionary Nationalist Movement. It's the actual political party that is bringing the base to his, coalition, in a sense. The party is National Conservatist, Economic Liberal, and Bolivian Nationalist, but it was formerly a Social Democratic, Democratic Socialist, Left-Wing Populist, Left-Wing Nationalist party. Yeah, how the mighty have fallen. It is weird, it was this traditionally leftist party, and then it became neoliberal. To be fair, social democracy is one step away from the third way philosophy, so it's definitely not that far off, in a sense. The interesting thing about Jorge is that he used to be president of Bolivia. He was kind of like a Harry Truman. He ran for president, like he became president because he, like, succeeded a dead colleague. Like one of the president before him died, so he became president. But then he decided to run for president in his own right in 2005, which he then lost to Evo Morales. Honestly, he hasn't been playing much of a role in the coup, so this is kind of just him jumping in where he doesn't belong. This is the election for the coup people. The people who took part in the coup and stuff. They don't need this man to just jump in and be like, it is my time to be president again. We need someone who's played a big hand in this coup. That's where we're going to get a start. This is the next candidate for president, Chi Hyun Chung. He is running under the coalition of the Front for Victory. Now, I mean, no offense to Chung, but out of all the candidates, he kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. And you can understand why. He's Korean. Well, Korean Bolivian. I think. He was born in Korea. Maybe part of him is Bolivian. Like, he was Bolivian before. Like, maybe he's, like, father's Bolivian. I'm not going to do that much research. All I know is that he's living in Bolivia. He has Korean descent. That's who he is. Well, I mean, technically that's not all I know. His political ideology is the more interesting part. He became notable in his country's media for his criticism of the LGBTQ community. He ran for president in the 2019 Bolivian election under the Christian Democratic Party, which we'll get to in a second, to the point where he has been called the Bolivian Bolsonaro. Unsurprisingly, he was well in charge of the opposition against Evo Morales. Like, very, very prominent figure. But yeah, there's honestly not much more about Chung in this particular instance. Because while he does play a decent part in the coup, he's not one of the head players. We're going to get into the three big players of the coup just in a second, though. These three are the ones that are more akin to the faces of the coup. He is running under the coalition titled We Believe. We Believe is a coalition of the political parties Solidarity Civic Union, a neoliberal populist center to center-right party, the Christian Democratic Party, a Christian Democratic, Christian Humanist, social conservative, liberal, center-right to right-wing party, and Nationalist Democratic Action. While strangely, he's also a member of the Revolutionary Nationalist Movement. This guy has kind of taken Chung's title of the Bolsonaro of Bolivia. He's an extremely right-wing, extremely conservative Catholic leader, even being dubbed a Christian fascist. Which, I mean, all Christians are fascists. He is very anti-indigenous people. That's one thing that has led many people to show, like, the opposition can range from people who have slight disagreements to Morales to far-right fascists. Like, I mean, listen to this. He made a speech, like, he stormed into the presidential palace and made an anti-Incan religion speech by saying, Pachamama will never return to the palace. Bolivia belongs to Christ. Camacho, in particular, he is literally, like, he's just got a lot of things going for him. I retweeted a Telesur thing a while ago that explains, like, how he was considered the leader of the protests, but he also has ties to the Panama Papers? Yeah, the Panama Papers. Or more recent, like, I don't remember. His family is way super rich in Bolivia, and has called for indefinite protests, called for religious iconography, And the groups that he founded for this coup are literally fascistic. Like, literally fascistic. There are videos of Bolivian people participating in the opposition that were literally doing sig heils. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure if Hitler were in Bolivia, you morena-skinned people would be just fine. Now, this is the one coup leader that makes all the other coup leaders jealous. Janine Áñez, who is running under the coalition called Juntos, which is a coalition of sovereignty and freedom, which doesn't have a page, so I don't know the ideology of that party, the National Unity Front, and the Democrat Social Movement. National Unity Front is a third-way social democratic party, center to center-left, which is part of Socialist International. They disappoint me. While I was reading through a lot of these, preparing for this episode, I did kind of go, social democracy, I'm starting to dislike the term social democracy, to be honest. Democrat Social Movement is a social conservative, economic liberal, regionalist, center-right party. Now, Janine Áñez, she makes all the other coup leaders jealous because she's president right now. She just happens to be in the position where she could go and be president. She just happened to be an elected figure at the time who was informally in line for the presidency. She technically wasn't in line because Bolivia never actually has any presidential successions. Because, believe it or not, they think presidents should serve their entire term and not get kicked out of the country. You can tell that she's not a fascist, but she definitely is a conservative and pretty racist and anti-religious in some senses. Not her religion, no, she's a Christian. In fact, one of the first things that she did when she got into office was carry a giant Bible with her to be put back into the pedestal where it belonged, because Morales took that out because he was an indigenous person. She's described 42% of the population of her own country, i.e. the indigenous people, satanic, and that no one can replace God. She said, "I dream of a Bolivia free of satanic indigenous rights, and the city is not a place for Indians. They must go to the highlands or the plains." She's called Morales himself the poor Indian. There's also a tweet of her where she is like, "Indigenous people? Look." And it shows like her circling an indigenous woman wearing shoes. Because indigenous people never wear shoes, apparently. Yeah. Also on her first day, she basically broke ties with Venezuela and pretty much jumped on board on the Juan Guaido ship. So yeah, she's a bad person, obviously. She's racist, she's anti-indigenous, and she's also a liar. Because she said that she wasn't going to run for a full presidential term. She was just going to serve as interim president. But, she just wanted that sweet, sweet power. The next, and who I assumed was the leader of the coup, is Carlos Mesa. Mesa is running under the coalition titled Civic Community, Constitutionalist, Liberal Democracy, Social Democracy, and Social Liberal. It is placed in the center of the political spectrum. It is a coalition of groups such as the Revolutionary Left Front, which is a reformist, social democratic, progressive third way movement in Bolivia. Mesa is also interesting because he has also served as president of Bolivia. Again, because the previous president died, and he has been running for many terms for a while now. And I originally thought that he was the leader of the coup, and I was actually giving Bolivia credit for that. Because I was like, at least they have a person who is legitimately a candidate against Morales running as the main opposition. But it turns out no. It turns out Camacho and Áñez are the ones who've been getting more of the spotlight. But Mesa seems to be the voice of reason, because Mesa technically comes from the leftist group. So he's kind of like the Dave Rubin of the group. Not literally Dave Rubin of the group. He's like they use him to parrot all their points, like, oh, I'm a leftist too, I'm social democratic, or blah blah blah. That proves that I know that this is screwed up and that Morales is evil and blah blah blah. And he seems to be the most popular of the oppositions. He seems to, because of the whole, he's reasonable. He was a candidate in the last election, so he actually had legitimate points against Morales at some point, or debate, or whatever. Like, they're like, oh, he was a candidate, so he must have known even before these guys that Morales wasn't that good, or something like that. The opposition just kind of has sort of gravitated to Mesa. Now, is there any hope? Because, all these opposition candidates make it not look so good for Bolivia's future. There is one. The Movement for Socialism. Evo Morales' political party. Because not everybody ran. A lot of people did. Morales fled to Mexico, and so did his VP. But not everybody left. Luis Alberto Arce Catacora, Minister of Economy and Public Finance under Evo Morales, is running as their candidate. And there's been some interesting things. Look at the polls. Here are the current polls for the election. Luis Arce is leading in pretty much all of them. All the ones that he's officially been a candidate in, he leads. Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily fit, because like the polls, he's steadily been climbing, and he's getting to the point where he's almost gotten to enough support to no longer need a runoff. And let's take a look at some of his choices for runoff. Like, what if him and Camacho make it into a runoff? Polling says Arce would win. What if him and Mesa made it into a runoff? 2 polls have been done, one for Mesa and one for Arce. What if Áñez makes it to the runoff? The polls don't show that him beating Áñez. So it's all dependent on who gets to the runoff. Seems that we need to get Arce into, to not need a runoff, because Arce is the only person who can get Bolivia back on track. Which is why I wholeheartedly endorse Luis Arce Catacora for Bolivia president. I don't know why I didn't endorse Morales. Morales seemed cooler and such, but, this is just too drastic for Bolivia for me to step out of line. So yeah. Let's see what goes on with Bolivia next. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when a future video of mine comes out. And if you're interested in more content from me, you can go to my website or follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Quora, or check my articles on the Independent Political Report.